Do you struggle to delegate at work? When I first moved into management, I found it really hard to delegate. Honestly, I was worried that I'd give the wrong task to the wrong person, it wouldn't get done, and then I would be the one who ended up in trouble. So instead of getting help and helping my team to develop their skills, I kept all the work to myself, which meant that I was working really long hours, my days were super stressful, and inevitably I would have to get help at the last minute, creating rush and urgency in other people's work days. So if that sounds like you, first of all, you're not on your own. And secondly, today I'm going to share the 7 steps in delegating to help you become more confident and start delegating at work where it makes sense for you. Now, before we get into it, I just want to talk about the benefits of delegation, just to remind you why it's a worthwhile exercise. When you delegate, you get hours back in your workday. I know that there's an investment up front while you train the other person and get them up to speed, but it's like the saying goes, why give someone a fish when you can teach them how to do it themselves? Once they are confident and able to do the work, then you have hours back to spend on other activities, whether that's reclaiming unplanned overtime or spending more time on high value work. As well as that, you're giving the other person the opportunity to develop and grow. They're going to learn new skills, which makes them more likely to stay and grow with your team and with your company. So it's winning all around. And when it comes to the organisation itself, when you delegate, it means that the right people are doing the right work and you are making the most of the skill and talent right across the company. And we don't have people who are very, very advanced doing basic tasks and people who need help getting caught up because those more experienced people aren't available to support them. In short, delegation allows everyone to create a better workday by spending time on the work that is best fit for them. So if I have convinced you that delegation is a good thing, why don't more people do it? Well, there are quite a few barriers to delegation, and I think it's important for us to address them up front. The first, as I've mentioned already, is a lack of time. I know that you're already very busy and you might not want to spend even more time training someone new. But as I said already, it is worth it in the long run. The second is that you don't think there's anyone who's interested or available to help. So you might want to delegate, but you don't believe anyone in your team or anyone who works near you has the interest, the time, or the ability to do the work. And finally, you're just not experienced in delegating, so you don't know where to begin, you don't want to take the risk, and so you think it's easier for you to keep on doing the work itself. If any of these barriers resonate with you, well, that's okay. It means that the steps I'm going to show you in just a minute are going to help you to delegate for the first time, and then the second time, and then to continue doing so until you are a master delegator. When it comes to delegation, there is a process, just like many other things in the working day. And I've developed a 7-step process for you to follow. This is going to ease you into it and make sure you're giving the right work to the right people at the right level. The first thing that you want to do is to identify the task to be delegated. Then you're going to select the right person for the task. Then you're going to clarify the scope. What are they going to do and what do they not need to do? And once you've done that, you're going to agree the approach together so that you're on the same page when it comes to who's doing what. Once you have your plan, you're going to assign the right level of authority, and that depends on the person, the role, and the task. You're going to confirm the schedule and the deadlines, and you're going to agree the checkpoints. So that's 7 steps, and you are well on your way to delegating. Step 1. What are you going to delegate? You could delegate anything from a single task to the running of an entire department. So it's really important for you to know what it is that you want to get help with or what it is that you want to assign to somebody else to look after. There are 6 different levels of delegation, and the one that you choose will depend on the task, the complexity, and the resources available to you. You might delegate a task and give people instructions. So it's very simply do as I say, follow the steps. You might ask someone to look into something and give you their advice or recommendations before you decide what to do next. If the person is more experienced, you might ask them to make the choice to decide what's the best route and then check with you before they implement it. Or you might give them the authority to make the decision and implement it as long as it's within certain constraints. So they're usually budget constraints or scope constraints. And then finally, for somebody who's very experienced and you've both built up that level of trust, you might ask them to simply take care of the whole task for you. So as you can see, there are 6 different steps there, and you can find the one that suits you. Before we go any further, I must talk about the tasks that you absolutely should not delegate. First of all, tasks that can only be completed by you. So perhaps you have a very specific skill, piece of knowledge, or piece of authority, sign off, whatever it is, but you can give the task away, it will only come back to you. Delegating that kind of work is a waste of time. The second thing that you should not delegate is a task that is critical and urgent. It might be a fire, but if it's been given to you, do not pass it on to somebody else. Instead, ask them to take care of other work that's not urgent, that's not critical, to free you up to focus on what you need to do. And finally, don't delegate confidential and sensitive issues unless you're delegating up to your manager or to someone like HR. Once you know what you want to delegate, the next thing to do is find the right person. And this will depend on a couple of things: their skill, their level of interest, their availability, and the team dynamics. So when it comes to their skill, they do not need to know everything in advance, but maybe they have expressed an interest, a baseline skill, or they've done similar work in the past. So depending on the level of delegation you're hoping to achieve, decide how big the gap is between what the person can do and what you need them to be able to do. And their interest in doing the work plays a huge part in this, because if the person is interested in the area, if it's something that they want to gain more experience in, a bigger skill gap can be overcome because they'll be willing to spend the time and to invest in learning how to do the work. So always consider skill and interest together. You're going to want to consider their workload. So no matter how good they might be and how interested they might be, if they're full, if they've got a full to-do list, you don't want to be adding more stuff to their plate. And finally, consider the team dynamics. So don't always delegate to the same person. You have to consider how it's going to be seen across the team. You want to make sure you're giving different people opportunities at different times. Once you've identified who the right person is, it's time to have a conversation, and you're going to do 2 things. You're going to clarify the scope and you're going to agree to the approach. When you clarify the scope, I want you to talk about what's included, so what you want them to do, what's not included, which is really important, and what they can do if the scope starts to increase. So here what we're doing is we're giving the person a clear understanding of what they should be doing and also what they don't need to worry about. And then allowing for that bit of grey in between, because honestly, in work, it's never as simple as it starts out. And once they know what's going to be involved, once they know what they're being asked to do, it's time for you guys to agree the approach. And it's really important to do this together. And the reason it's so important is because different people have different learning styles. So even though you might think your approach is great, it might not work at all for the other person. Here are 2 examples. Somebody who learns by watching might like to sit down with you and watch you do the work for an hour, observe you, take notes, and then go away and try to do it themselves. Now, somebody else who learns by doing would find that a complete waste of time, because they can't really understand what's involved until they start trying to do it themselves. So in that case, you might spend 15 minutes giving them a quick brief, letting them go and explore for 45 minutes or an hour, and then come back to have a conversation and to clarify things that they don't understand. So really, you have to do this together to understand how the other person prefers to learn, and this is going to save you time. So definitely, please do this step. When you have covered the scope and the approach, you need to talk about the level of authority that somebody has, because this is one of the big causes of bottlenecks when it comes to delegating. The other person might have done all of the work, but they can't move forward because you are the decision maker at every single point. And if you're caught up in other work or in back-to-back meetings, they can't move forward until you sign off on that particular stage. The level of authority you give to somebody will depend on a couple of things: their level of experience, how much knowledge they have, their skill gap, have they done something similar before, the list goes on. But remember, there are different levels of authority that you can give somebody, just like I said in the 6 levels of delegation earlier. So if it makes sense, go back to that and ask them, where do they feel comfortable? And then you talk about where you feel comfortable and agree between you. And when you agree, just make sure that you write it down. And it's not just to write it down for the 2 of you, it's also so that they can reference it to other people, maybe people in other teams, other managers, or anyone else who might ask, what sign off do you have? We're almost there. It's time to talk about schedules, timelines, and check-ins. So when you're talking about schedules and due dates, it's worth opening up your calendar and the other person's calendar when you're doing it. And the reason is there's no point somebody rushing to get a piece of work to you by Tuesday, only for you to realise that you are off that day, or you're at an offsite, or you don't actually need it until the Friday. So by looking at the schedule with your current calendars and commitments in mind, it makes it more realistic for you both and means that one person isn't rushing unnecessarily, and that always helps. And it's good then to communicate those deadlines to anyone else who might be impacted. Once you've them in place, it's also good to schedule your check-ins. Again, more junior people or people who need more support might have shorter, regular check-ins to make sure that they can clear any questions and make progress as quickly as possible. If someone is more experienced, they might check in less regularly, maybe an hour every week or every 2 weeks, but make sure that they have a way to reach you if they need you urgently. So that means you let them know the best way for them to get in contact with you if they need you right now. Those are the 7 steps of delegation, and while I would love to promise you that it will always run smoothly, it doesn't. So what do we do if delegation goes wrong? Well, the first thing is take 5. Take a deep breath and assess the current situation. Not the person's performance, not how well they've been doing or not doing, but the problem itself, what has gone wrong, and focus on resolving that. So team up together and do your best to get things back on track, or resolve the miscommunication, or realign the expectation, or whatever it is, whatever the problem is, focus on fixing it together. And once that's done, then you can take a step back and consider why things went wrong, what could have been done differently, could anything have been prevented, are there any lessons to be learned, and most importantly, don't give up. I know it can be disheartening when delegation doesn't work out, but it's important for us to keep trying and for you to work with other people to find the right people to match with the right jobs. Otherwise, you're going to be overworked, overstretched, and other people aren't going to have that opportunity to grow and to develop in the same way that you did. So when things go wrong, take a breath, focus on the problem to be solved, and then decide what you can do differently the next time. I hope you found this helpful in terms of delegation. I would love to know if you're going to go and try to delegate something as a result of watching this video. Let me know in the comments and let me know how you get on. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be delighted to answer them for you. Until next time, stay well and have a better workday.